concept of accessibility, we've talked about in a context of somebody with a disability, whether it be a physical one or visual or whatever. But I started to wonder about what a definition might be if you extended it to social accessibility, educational accessibility. Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's like I go back to this thoughts around diversity, right? We always talk about diversity primarily from the idea of gender. And then we go after, and then diversity in the workplace is primarily driven by gender, and then it's maybe driven by race, right? And we almost never talk about diversity by disability, right?
In fact, just, now that you mention it, I don't think I've ever heard it mentioned.
We make an assumption about it, but we never really think about it. We don't put a KPI against it. So it's like, how do we, if we applied diversity from a much broader perspective, how would you change your thinking around, access to employment, access to an education, access to social life, right? There are, when we talk about accessibility from a physical perspective, we think about, it's easy to go, well, okay, I'm thinking about ramps and lifts and how I get into it, how wide is the doorway. But when you go access to social life, it starts to go, I should have the right and the means to hang out where I want, go to the cinema with friends, sit next to people that I want to sit next to, not, walk through the door alongside them, not go, there's an accessible entrance around the corner, right? And, access to services. I guess in a millennial generation, we're really happy to, we want more services, right? We want outcomes. We want to use applications. We're happy to consume a lot of things that we would have in a traditional world in a very different way, right? For example, e-commerce has probably completely changed the way a lot of people with disabilities interact with retail, because where before access to that aspect of social life, going to the mall to shop, was very much about transport and physical access, and also facing discrimination in that interaction of customer service, right? So I'll go into a shoe shop and people will not actually talk to me. People will talk to my partner instead.
Oh, really? Really?
Even though I'm the buyer, right? It's men's shoes and I'm the buyer. And they'll make an assumption, well, the guy in the wheelchair is probably not going to need a pair of shoes, or, is incapable of having the interaction. So, which is...
How do you address that, though? If somebody is talking to your partner about men's shoes with her obvious partner next to her, how do you deal with that? Do you say, hi, excuse me, actually I'm the customer, or what do you do?
Sometimes you need to do that, right? So I guess it's that's the where you have to decide, is it a good day or a bad day? Do you want to turn that interaction into an opportunity for advocacy and an argument for civil rights, which believe me, I have done that. More often than not, I have to say that's probably my angle. In my older age, I think I might have calmed those moments down a little bit more.
Haven't we all? Goodness.
So so there are different approaches to it, right? But I think you look at where we are today, and the pervasiveness of technologies means that you can now consume a lot of things that from an aspect of disability and access that you could not reach before. You find it easier to reach now, right? Because you don't necessarily have to interact with the physical infrastructure or people, because you can just do it online.